and welcome to Good Evening Britain, a Force for Good's weekly show coming to you live from our studios here in the heart of the great British city of Glasgow, with me, your host, Alistair McConnachie, broadcasting around the world and throughout the United Kingdom. We're bringing you quality pro-UK comment and analysis every Wednesday from 7 until 8 p.m. on YouTube, on Facebook and on Twitter live. This is our 22nd show. Thank you very much to everybody who makes that happen, and thank you especially to the viewers. Please do send in your comments on all the platforms, and we'll see them and we will read them out. And we're very interested tonight in your comments on Nicola Sturgeon's Pretendy referendum. The referendum that's not going to happen, or is it going to happen? That's the question which we're posing to you tonight, and which we will try to answer as best as we can. We're also going to be looking at our very exciting rally which is coming up this Saturday in Stirling, and we're going to be talking about that, and we're going to be welcoming you and inviting you along to it if you are in the Stirling area this Saturday at lunchtime. Nice to see all the folk coming in. John was first in saying hello on YouTube, and good evening to you, Marcus, and to Frankie, and to Derek, and also to Adam in the house as always. Hello to Alan and to Sandra, who says evening, and Alistair, and to all fellow UK supporters. And we are absolutely UK supporters here, and goodness knows we need a place for UK supporters to come and hear the good message, because when you turn on the television or radio, all you hear is the bad message, the message of division, the message of disunity, the message of trying to break up our wonderful country, our hundreds and hundreds of year old country, trying to break it up. Good evening to Richard, and to Rona, and to Harry Brown, who says good evening. I do apologise, I haven't been here live for 2 weeks. Harry, always good to see you whenever you can make it. And to Tim says Pretendy ref. Isn't it just a Pretendy ref organised by their Pretendy ministers, who are on great sinecures for doing very little other than complaining and breaking up stuff and being divisive and negative. Christopher says a great unionist evening to all, especially our lovely SNP friends on TikTok. Adam says, have you seen this article by Stephen Daisley? I think I know what one you're referring to. He goes on about independence and how politics keep bringing it up so that the SNP can keep promoting it. Yes, Stephen Daisley wrote an article saying that the best approach to the Pretendy ref was simply to ignore it and to pretend that it's not happening. And in fact, that is wise words, absolutely, because the crux of his article was that if you start to analyse all their proposals that they're talking about, and then start to argue with their economic proposals or with various points here, there and everywhere, you're certainly giving it a degree of legitimacy, and you're keeping the whole thing, the pot boiling. And he makes a very good point, and completely understand what he is meaning. And really the way to stop that is to steal a march on them. It's to change the agenda, is to change the narrative so that they get put on the back foot. They're the ones who get told that they're undemocratic for not accepting the 2014 referendum. They're the ones who should get put on the back foot for trying to break up our amazing country. How dare they try to break up our amazing country? How dare they try to bring in all the division that that's going to achieve? We need them to be put on the back foot. We need our British government to come up with policies that the SNP will then oppose and start arguing about, so that instead of us all talking about Nicola Sturgeon's idea, we're now talking about the British government's idea. That's how you change the debate, so that you're not just focusing on their idea, they've got to answer to your ideas. It's called changing the frame, and we definitely need politicians who can change the frame rather than just going along with the present miserable frame. More about that in a moment once I've read out your greetings. Now, Catherine says she's worried that if it came to pass and we didn't vote, what would be the situation there? Well, I've heard that concern expressed before, Catherine, and I know where you're coming from. Hi, Joe. Tim says he hates the SNP. Britain will always survive. It will always survive so long as there are good people who will fight for it politically and democratically and culturally and socially for it to survive. Kat says, hello, everyone coming from East Ayrshire tonight. Well, I like that area of the country very much so. Good evening to Stephen and to Stuart and to Jim. Now, Alan says he'll not vote in it because that would only give it legitimacy. Soon as the results come back and less than half the electorate vote for it, it will show we would have won anyway. Yeah, that's the angle, definitely. And Sandra says, as someone said on Twitter, the Sturge, whom we should purge, is not interested in a referendum. She's kicking off an election campaign. Yes, indeed. She knows she will be refused, therefore she gets to hype up the rhetoric of Westminster disrespects democracy, Westminster disrespects Scotland, until the next general election in 2024. She then gets a huge win on the back of her mega whinge. Her mega whinge. The only thing she's been good at is ramping up hatred of Westminster and Conservatives. Yes, that's well said, Sandra. The mega whinge. And the mega whinge regarding democracy is going to be epic. It's going to be an epic mega whinge on democracy. Believe me, they've started already, and I've got an article I want to talk to you about regarding that very shortly. Folks, please share around. Anthony says he's shared the link. Excellent. That's the only way we get out, because otherwise we don't have we don't advertise on social media. We don't obviously have the money to advertise on social media, so we rely upon our supporters sharing and retweeting on social media and subscribing on YouTube. Thank you. Purge the Sturge. Absolutely purge the Sturge. Darryl says, good evening to all our British brothers and sisters, the boys and girls of the bulldog breed. Sam Menzies has heard that Glasgow City Council has cancelled Armed Forces Day for Gay Pride this Saturday. Don't know anything about that. I didn't even know there was an Armed Forces Day in Glasgow, to be frank with you. But it doesn't surprise me if they've done that. There used to be a really good one. But then that got stopped. Christopher says the frame should be that the SNP disrespects Scotland. Well, absolutely. You know, you get somebody with a loud enough voice and they can start broadcasting that particular line throughout the media, and before you know it, everybody's having conversations about the extent to which Nicola Sturgeon is disrespecting Scotland, the extent to which Nicola Sturgeon is disrespecting the Scottish vote in 2014, disrespecting the majority of people who voted for parties at Westminster, which are for keeping the UK together. You see, we have, as I always say, we have democracy on our side. At the last UK general election in 2019, the majority of people in Scotland who voted for parties that wanted to keep the UK together. They did not vote. The minority voted for SNP and Greens. And by so doing, we gave absolutely democratic authority and legitimacy to Westminster to continue to keep the UK together. And in fact, that will always be the case until the SNP decides to stand as abstentionists. And even then, they would need to get a majority vote as abstentionists. Because while it's quite a true constitutional point, not understood by very many people, but the Union is held together at the level of the Westminster vote. Always has been, always will be. That's what holds it together. And that's where the authority lies to keep the Union together, so long as British people and so long as people in Scotland vote at British parliamentary elections for parties to keep the UK together. So long as we've got that, it's held together. Tommy, hi. Loyal Coatbridge Labour, never ever voted them. Was a stronghold here, now all SNP. Rule Britannia. Anthony says we're doing a great job. Keep pushing the agenda. We certainly will. Now, just before I continue, 2 weeks ago somebody asked us what happened to Lord Foulkes when he was in the House of Lords and he raised the issue about the British government directly funding the civil servants in Edinburgh to prepare for a second referendum. An absolute travesty, of course, an absolute waste of our money. Lord Foulkes, a Labour peer, quite rightly pointed this out, and he raised the issue and he asked, what is the British government going to do about the fact that they are actually paying our taxpayers' money to their own employees to scheme to break up the United Kingdom, right? This is where we're at. It's unbelievable. And the stupid person who responded said, Lord Stephen Greenhoch, the Minister of State at the Department for Levelling Up, replied that although he agreed with Foulkes' sentiment, he would not be escalating this further. He would not be taking it on board. He would not be doing anything with it. He said, quote, "It is clearly an important issue to maintain the union." Oh, is it? Oh, good point. It's clear, yeah. But the devolution settlement set out the responsibilities that fall within devolved and reserved competence. The devolution settlement set out the responsibilities that fall within devolved and reserved competence. So what the British Tory government with an 80-seat majority is doing is falling back on something called the devolution settlement. And this is absolutely crucial to understanding what's happening here. Because back when the Parliament was established in 1999, they set up what they called a devolution settlement, which said that unless it's written down as reserved, everything is devolved. And it's that which has enabled the SNP to keep spreading its power like a gas into all sorts of nooks and crannies that were hitherto either not known about or not thought about, or which didn't even exist at the time of the 1999 establishment of the Scottish Parliament. And that devolution settlement is what all the Tories and Labour since then have fallen back on to excuse themselves doing nothing. And we wrote in our Do More Together magazine, which you can get at our shop, we wrote about how the devolution settlement was the wrong way round. Get devolution settlement right way round. And we explained why that was wrong, why granting Holyrood power over everything except that which is written down is wrong. You should only grant them power over that which is explicitly written down. That's the only way that a unitary state can hold itself together. But it still seems that even now, in 2022, even after the obvious extent to which that particular incorrect settlement has proven to be the destruction of the union, the government is still falling back on that as an excuse to do nothing. So, folks, we're on our own here at the end of the day. It's only the conclusion you can draw from that, because it's like they're not going to do anything to stop this. And so if God forbid there is another referendum, all us unionists are going to be fighting the power of the British civil service, funded by ourselves, who are going to be on the side of the SNP. It's beyond a travesty, but that's the situation at the moment. And yes, the problem is the lack of rigour. That's the word, isn't it? The lack of rigour in this so-called settlement. And I really don't like that word as well, settlement, as if everything's settled now. Well, that's not the way that life works, and it's not the way that politics works. So Sandra says something that's a little bit concerning. She says, it seems to me that it suits Sturgeon to have a Conservative government in Westminster, and it suits Westminster to have SNP in Scotland, because this prevents Labour from getting the Scottish seats and forming the Westminster government. Well, that's something to give us nightmares about, if you're correct, Sandra. But you have to wonder at the inaction of the Tories. And you have to wonder, is there some underlying reason that they prefer to do nothing when they could really change the agenda? They could come out and say, right, that's it. Not a single penny is going to be spent enabling the destruction of the United Kingdom, not on the British taxpayers' dime. That's just, forget that. We're just going to change that around. That's simply not acceptable. Settlement or no settlement. But they don't. Who would do that? Who's got the cajones to stand up and take on Sturgeon in that way? I mean, all these kind of, don't want to be classist or anything, but these kind of like soft toffs in the cabinet, none of them will have a clue what I'm even talking about, let alone have the ability to do that. Anyway, keep praying, folks, and keep hoping for the best. And remember, there's always tomorrow, and things can and will improve. Yes, we can do this, Anthony. We can do this. We can do this even if we're on our own doing it. And, well, you see, that's an idea, just dissolve the Scottish Parliament, but that's a step sometime in the future. Now, if ever, of course, that's might not be the most practical thing, although I know some people do believe in that. Now, where are we? Yes, quick report on our amazing activism last Saturday. Okay, we were in Argyle Street meeting the great British public, flying the flags high at another of our Jubilee street stalls. We've been out every Saturday this month, and what a reception we had. It really was. There was always somebody at the table, and we got a lot of sign-ups and a lot of people saying how much they really did appreciate seeing us out there. And we've got some pics here which are so colourful, so colourful. I just want to run through them. There you go. There's 3 of our activists. We had 7 of our activists at the table throughout the day, and there's 3 of them beautifully branded with AFFG gear, and that's a really striking and colourful photograph. And we've got the best colours, folks. We definitely do. And moving on, that's us seen from the table, 4 of us there. Now, people will say, where can you get those t-shirts? And basically where you can get them is at our shop, which is a forceforgood.uk/shop-1. And we've got a range of t-shirts, and the lady there is wearing one of our hoodies. We've got a range of hoodies. They're in all colours and all sizes, and if you order one, they take 10 to 14 days turnaround, and really, really nice. Let's have a look at the next photo. Let's just keep the shop up there and have a look at the next photo. There we go. is a closer look at our branded gear. The Scottish and British t-shirts and hoodies are our best sellers, followed by British Together. Okay, there you go. Isn't that a classic photograph? That's a really good photograph. Thanks to our activist who turned up wearing that powerfully red AFFG colours that says Scottish and British. Go to our shop and you'll find that one there. We've also got English and British, Welsh and British Ulster. And they all play on that heart design with the flag of the particular country next to the flag of the United Kingdom. Okay. There's some people at our stall taking our magazines. There's more people at our stall with our excellent fellow there manning it. And another photograph of the busy stall showing our two flags slightly back to front there because they're only printed on one side, but that's the AFFG flag along with our Jubilee flag celebrating the Queen's 70th. Okay, so any more photographs? There we go. There's two staunch lads with our t-shirts on, Scottish and British, and your just classic AFFG Heart Badge as well. Okay, fantastic. These were great photographs, and it was a beautiful day as well. So thanks very much for all the activists who came along. Now, we have got a big event coming up this Saturday. And that is, of course, our Stirling rally. Bruce to Elizabeth, our great British monarchy. It's our celebration rally on the 25th, Saturday the 25th of June. And you might wonder why we've chosen that date. Well, of course, the Battle of Bannockburn was on the 24th of June in 1314. And we're going to be there. We're going to be remembering Bruce, and we're also going to be celebrating the fact that we've moved on, and we're going to be celebrating the unity and the healing which can now be found today in the Union, and in which, in fact, is embodied in the person of the Queen, who is a direct descendant of Robert the Bruce. And that's why we've got that flag there. That's the Scottish Royal Standard. When the Queen is in Scotland, that's the one that is displayed, and it's quartered there into lion rampants, English lions, and Irish harp. A very pretty flag. We'll be flying that one high, I can assure you, in order to celebrate the Bruce to Elizabeth, our great British monarchy. Because, you know, there's two ways of looking at the past, and a lot of people, what they want to do, like if you don't like the United Kingdom, or if you're kind of woke or something like that, what you do is you look to the past and you try to find the divisions, you try to find the fault lines, you try to find the wounds, and then what you try to do is you want to pick at it and jab at it and drive nails into it and open up these fissures again, and open up these fault lines and open up these wounds, and hey presto, you then have everybody fighting against each other. That's one way of looking at it, and there's a lot of people, unfortunately, in today's political and cultural world who like to look on the past in that way. The other way of looking at the past is to recognise where there have been fault lines, where there have been wounds, and to seek to reconcile those in the present in whatever way that you possibly can. And so that's the difference really between us and the Scottish nationalists, who are also going to be marching that day, by the way, and they're going to be passing our rally. They look on those conflicts of the past and they think, oh, brilliant, Scots beating up the English, that's right up my street in their opinion. Whereas we're looking at it and we're thinking, right, we've moved on from that, we can reconcile that today, and there's so many ways in which we can do that properly, and the Union is one of the ways in which these differences can be reconciled and can be healed. And especially it's great that we have a head of state who is a direct descendant, and whose children are of course direct descendants, and whose children's children will always be direct descendants of Robert the Bruce, for example. And we'll be giving away our magazine as well. We'll have a small table there, and we'll be giving this away to anybody who wants a copy, which is our 12-page Union Heart. And in it we detail Bruce to Elizabeth, our great British monarchy, starting from Bruce and going right down there. And it's really well worth getting a copy of this. If you want a copy of this and you won't be at our street stall, the easiest way is to simply buy one of these little badges, go to our shop, buy a badge, and we will send you a free copy. We will send you a free copy of our magazine. There we go. Let's hold this up. There you go. Good, so that's this Saturday. Now, if you'd like to join us, please send us an email to contact@aforceforgood.uk. Okay, we'll get back to you with the times and where we're going to stand and all the info that you need to know if you want to be out with us. And this has never happened before, right? There's never been a pro-unionist organisation that has had a rally in Stirling Town Centre to commemorate both Robert the Bruce and Queen Elizabeth. So please do come along. It's going to be a really nice day. Lots of lovely people there. Our AFFG activists are top of the range folk. You'll really like meeting them and meeting us all and standing in solidarity with us. So please come along for that. It's going to be a really good day. All right. Now, what we've got coming up shortly is our competition. Let me just look at some of the comments first to read them out. Marcus there's written something about he's heard that the state of Texas wants to break away from the USA. Haven't heard that, although I can imagine there'll be some people in Texas certainly want to do that, because they don't like Joe Biden, who was pro-EU and wants to against basically the Northern Irish Unionists. Well, we'll have to see what's going to happen in America and whether it can survive the revolution which it's going through at the moment, and indeed whether any of us can survive that. So folks, send in your comments and please do share. Catherine says, bring plenty of magazines. I certainly will do that. I certainly would do that. Stuart says, change the dreadful dirge flower of Scotland from being the national anthem. Well, we will be playing the God Save the Queen. We'll be playing our rock version of God Save the Queen in our PA system, that's for sure. That's how we will end the day. So, looking forward to that. Now, going to there's a competition coming up. I'm going to ask you a question, and it's for one of these brilliant little badges which says E2R 70, the Queen's Platinum Jubilee 1952 to 2022. Now, if you haven't entered the competition before, you're in with a very good chance of winning, and all you have to do is send in your answer to contact@aforceforgood.uk. And if you're first on the buzzer, we will send you that. So I'll ask you a question after I have given you this day in British history. On this day in British history, because British history matters, because if you don't know where you're going, you don't know where you're going if you don't know where you are, and you don't know where you are if you don't know where you've been. Now, various things on this day. The first thing I want to talk about is the Scots artist David Wilkie, okay, who produced this painting, which is called Chelsea Pensioners Reading the Gazette of the Battle of Waterloo. And of course we know the Battle of Waterloo was on the 15th of June. And there it is there, David Wilkie. Now, that's actually a pretty famous painting in the annals of Britain. David Wilkie was a Scottish artist, and he painted that to celebrate the victory of the Battle of Waterloo, and that is meant to be today. It's meant to be the 22nd of June in 1815. And Linda Colley describes the painting for us in her book Britain's Forging the Nation, and she says it is an imaginary scene, but it is representing the existence of a mass British patriotism transcending the boundaries of class, ethnicity, occupation, sex, and age. And she has forensically analysed it, and I'll just read one or two bits about it here. She goes, it's a miscellaneous crowd of soldiers, veterans, womenfolk, and workers shown reacting to the news on this day, the 22nd of June in 1822. And at the back there's a Scottish Highlander plunges into a celebratory tune on the bagpipes. Women are being drawn into a dance in the middle foreground. A sergeant tosses his baby into the air, and his companion pauses to arrange her hair, her arms raised motionless above her head as she listens pensively to the account of the battle. An elderly oyster seller has stopped in the very act of opening an oyster and is grinning as her imagination catches fire. Everywhere there is music, laughter, abundant beer, good-humoured flirtation, intense interest, and something more significant: the existence of a mass British patriotism, transcending the boundaries of class, ethnicity, occupation, sex, and age. The horseman bringing the news of the victory is from a Welsh regiment. The soldiers gathering around him include Scotsmen, Englishmen, Irishmen, and even a black military bandsman. The Chelsea pensioner reading aloud from the pages of the Gazette is a veteran of the battle for Quebec. And although you can't see it, the names of the pubs are the Duke of York, the Marquis of Granby, and the Snowshoes, which is a relic from the War of American Independence. Now that picture, I've seen that picture in real life actually. It's in Apsley House, which is the big house at the corner of Hyde Park, which belongs to the Duke of Wellington. And it's probably about 8 feet by 5 feet, something like that. It's worth visiting Apsley House actually if you're ever in that area of London. What else happened on this day, on the 22nd of June in 1897? There was the first ever Diamond Jubilee celebration, and that was for Queen Victoria. And there she is being paraded through the streets of London in 1897, the first ever Diamond Jubilee of a British monarch. Okay. And on a more tragic note, the murder today of Henry Wilson, who was a British Army general and Ulster Unionist MP, who was murdered by a couple of IRA fanatics outside his house in Belgravia in 1922, after he had returned from opening a war memorial at Liverpool Street Station. And he was actually an Irishman from County Longford, but very much a unionist Irishman, and he was for a period of time the head of the British Army. And he had a bad scar on his face, earning him the moniker the ugliest man in the British Army. Anyway, the good news is his murderers were caught and tried and hanged by the neck. But the bad news is it set off another civil war in Ireland. And a recent book has been written about him called Great Hatred: The Assassination of Field Marshal Sir Henry Wilson MP. And the book's written by Ronan McGreevy. And he believes that it was Michael Collins who actually ordered the murder of Wilson. And it wasn't, of course, a very good idea, because that set everything aflame again. And 2 months later, it ended in the killing of Michael Collins himself by one of his IRA opponents. So tragedy all round on that particular one, but well worth remembering, because not everybody's aware of the murder of Henry Wilson and the extent to which that had huge repercussions on the Irish Civil War back in the early 1920s. And for those who want to buy a commemorative badge, actually, I saw one was on sale today at empirepoppy.store. empirepoppy.store are selling commemorative badges, because it was 100 years ago that happened. Now, for those of you who would like to win this little badge, and it is a cracker, please send your answer to this question in to contact@aforceforgood. And if you have not entered that before, if you've not entered it before, you are in with a very good chance of winning. So if you'd like this, please do enter a question. And my question to you is, on this day, 22nd of June, was the very first Diamond Jubilee of which British monarch? On this day, 22nd of June, the Diamond Jubilee of which British monarch? First ever Diamond Jubilee. And if you've not entered before, please do, because you'll be in with a good chance of winning. Fantastic. On this day in British history, because we don't know where we're going if we don't know where we are, and we don't know where we are if we don't know where we've been. Paul Hadlow says, Paul Hadlow says, is Boris facing his Waterloo with 2 imminent by-elections? Gosh. Don't know. Nelson says, you and the AFFG crew are leading from the front. Thanks, we can only lead from the front. We can only even just be here as a result of our supporters. And so please, if you'd like to chip in to our crowdfunder, which will be ending this time next week, it's still going, it's got 7 days left. If you'd like to chip into our crowdfunder, please do take this opportunity. crowdfunder.co.uk/p/union 2022. There it is there. And what you can also do is click on that QR code, and that will take you as well to the crowdfunder. Let's do that again. There we go. Click on that QR code and that will take you to the crowdfunder as well. Or not click on it, just hold your mobile phone over it. It's brilliant. It's amazing. Absolutely. Note the QR code is at the top right of the screen. Download, hold your camera over it and it will take you straight to our summer appeal. Well said, well said. Now, what I want to just speak about now is going back to this whole democracy lark, okay? And this has to be said, because they're really going, the whole angle that they're taking is, you're not giving us a referendum because you're not democratic. And they'll say things like, do you believe Scotland has a right to decide its own future? And very similar to that is, the people of Scotland have the right to choose to form the government best suited to their needs. So the implication is that people are trying to deny Scotland, or the people of Scotland, the right to decide our own future. That's the implication, and that's the angle that they're really, really going at now, and that's all you're going to hear. And as mentioned it last week, they're trying to associate the name of our country that they want to break up with the word undemocratic, and they're trying to bring that together and solidify it in people's minds. So let's just break this down a little bit. Does Scotland have a right to decide its own future? Do you believe it has a right to decide its own future? You can call that a principle, the idea that we have a right to decide our own future. That's the principle of the matter. But that doesn't mean that we agree with a policy based on that principle. In this case, using that principle to force a second referendum. We can agree on the principle that Scotland has a right to decide its own future, which we're all doing all the time, by the way, whenever we vote. We can agree on that, but we don't agree that this principle should be used to justify the policy of breaking up the country. We can accept the principle without accepting the policy that is being implied from it, the policy that is being derived from it, the policy to use that principle to try to break up the country at every cut and turn. So our objections are not about the principle, they're about the policy that you're trying to imply from that principle. And the second point is, from what perspective are they applying this principle anyway? Okay, and they're applying this principle, the idea that Scotland has a right to decide its own future. They're only applying that from their narrow Scottish nationalist perspective. They're only acknowledging the idea that in their minds, Holyrood has a democratic mandate. They're not acknowledging it. They're not acknowledging that principle from the perspective of the unionists, who are saying as well that British Parliament has a mandate to keep the United Kingdom together, a mandate that we have given it to keep the United Kingdom together. So they're talking about democracy, but they're only looking at it from that Scottish nationalist perspective, that narrow perspective where it only serves their purpose. They're not looking at the wider democratic picture that we unionists look at, which is that we've given Westminster a mandate to hold the United Kingdom together. And we also have a mandate that stretches back to 2014, when the most people in Scotland ever to vote voted overwhelmingly to keep the UK together. So their perspective about Scotland having a right to choose is only coming from one angle. It's not looking at the big democratic picture. It's not looking at any other angle on the matter. And thirdly, remember that a lot of this rhetoric that you hear from these people is insincere. When they're talking about Scotland has a democratic right to decide its own future, they're insincere about that, because imagine if, God forbid, there was a second referendum. Imagine we won it again. Do you think they're then going to accept that that's the democratic solution, that that's the democratic result? Do you think that they're then going to say, oh, okay, fair enough, we'll shut up now? Of course not. Of course not. They're going to say something like, oh, all that proves is Scotland has a democratic right to hold a third referendum that they lose. And then they'll say, well, Scotland has a right to decide its own future in a fourth referendum. You know, so it's just like insincere rhetoric, which is only being used in order to bolster and promote their policy of trying to break up the United Kingdom. They would simply disrespect the vote of Scots if they lost a second referendum anyway. They wouldn't accept that that was somehow the democratic mandate of the Scottish people. They'd give it 24 hours and they would start talking about a third referendum. We know that. So it's insincere when they talk about that. So these are three areas. You know, firstly, the principle. We can agree on the principle, but we don't agree with how that principle is being used to justify a policy of breaking up the country. Secondly, when they talk about democracy, they're only looking at it from their own narrow perspective. They're not acknowledging and accepting our democratic mandate as unionists. And thirdly, they're insincere anyway, because if they lost a second referendum, they would start talking about a third referendum and how it was a democratic right of Scots to have a third referendum and a fourth referendum and a fifth referendum. And then if they ever won it, do you think they're going to stand up for our democratic right to have another to oppose it? Of course not. So we're going to be talking a lot about this in the future, because this is going to be the big one that they're going to be pushing in the next 18 months. Because they like that, they like it. They think that it is unassailable. Because I read the National every day so that you don't have to, and believe me, all their thinkers, to use that in a very broad sense, all their thinkers are pushing this line. This is the line that we've got to use. It's the democracy thing. Absolutely. They can't argue against that. Well, yes, we can argue against it, and we can argue against it effectively if we have the politicians who stand up and say the sort of things that I've just said there. Good. And as Paul says, would the SNP give a second referendum if Yes had won? They wouldn't, would they? They wouldn't. And Carol says no. Or they would have accepted it the first time. PBC says if SNP won, they do what Zelensky has done and stop any opposition. Christopher says the SNP are the definition of bad losers. And that's right, Paul. Nationalists seem to think they have a right to as many referendums as possible. Unionists can only lose once, though. Stuart wonders, will Sturgeon still be around next October? Well, I think it's pretty likely that she will be. She doesn't have any competitors at this stage. And think how undemocratic they are as well. They don't want to give parents a right to a say in their kids' education. Oh my goodness me, if you've got a child at school in Scotland at this present stage, please do watch what they're being taught and try to keep them on the right path, because the system is out to get them. Believe me, the system is out to get the children. Worldwide, throughout the Western world now, it's really disturbing what's going on. Yep. They don't like to hear the word no, the SNP, that's for sure, Carol. And of course there's the dichotomy with the SNP, as Marcus points out, that they're national in the name, in name only, but are really internationalists. And that's certainly true. I mean, they don't believe that Scotland should have borders other than a border with England. Oh, they believe in that. They very much believe that we should have a border with England. But as for a border with the rest of the world, no, it's just like let everybody in. BBC says Glasgow Cabbie has a protest next week in Glasgow. Now, Glasgow Cabbie is a powerful voice here in Glasgow against the SNP's sexual indoctrination of children, and he's been doing some good work. And if you want to, well, tell us a bit more about when that is, PBC, and I'll flag it up. Mary thinks the SNP will be nastier this time around. Well, if there is a this time, but yes, they will certainly. They're not going to hold back. Believe it or not, Salmond did hold back on a few things, and I know this sounds ridiculous, but in a sense he was a kind of restraining force on the Nutters. But right now, the Nutters are in full flow, and there's nobody to restrain them. And Sturgeon, it's her last throw of the dice, and so she's going to be all out as well. So it's going to be a lot of nastiness spoken against unionists, against Brits in Scotland, against the British government. So, but this is the nature of this Scottish National Party. They have to be divisive. That's their whole modus operandi. They, at the end of the day, they want to destroy the UK. They want to destroy the greatest country the world has ever known. Missy says the SNP are social fascists. They don't want freedom of thought and speech. PBC says the Glasgow Cabbie demonstration is at 7 p.m. at Robertson Street on the 29th of June, outside the Education Scotland premises. Education Scotland, there's a misnomer. Miss Education Scotland. The SNP love sticking the word Scotland on anything, on absolutely anything. Any government quango will have the word Scotland attached to it. And resisting the lies, resisting the lies, that's what we have to do, isn't it? Says the idea of this being, quote, Scotland's right to determine its future is absolute nonsense, given the fact that the SNP are treating a yes vote as a vote to rejoin the EU, which is not synonymous with so-called independence. Well, that's true, isn't it? They'll probably try to downplay that angle over the next 18 months. Now, and yeah, PBC says many people voted in 2014 to leave the UK and also in 2016 to leave the EU. And that's right. I've seen figures saying about a third of SNP voters wanted to leave the EU, and of course it would have been far more if we had a culture here in Scotland, a media culture and a political culture that allowed the Eurosceptical voice to be heard. But of course the entire media in Scotland was for staying in the EU, but still we got over 1 million people voting to leave the EU, which is remarkable considering that they did not have any spokespeople speaking for them in Scotland at all, other than a couple of Tory backbenchers and a couple of Labour backbenchers in Holyrood. These were the only people. All the leaders of all the parties were all united to stay in the EU, but still over 1 million Scots voted to leave, which was amazing when you think about that. Because They had no political leadership in Scotland telling them to leave, but still they voted to leave. Christopher says more people voted for Brexit in Scotland than voted for the SNP. Aye. So we have a winner of our competition. Now, the competition was for this little badge, a really nice badge which will be winging its way to the winner. Now, we asked the question on this day, 22nd of June, the very first Diamond Jubilee celebration for which British monarch, and the answer was, of course, Queen Victoria in 1897, just a few years towards the end of her reign. And we have a winner, and it's Mary Clark. Fantastic, Mary. I think you're a first-time winner, which is great. And if you, please, Mary, if you could send us, use that email again, and send us your address, please. And we'll send you not only this, but we'll also send you a complimentary copy of Union Heart. Okay. And this is, it's £3.50 to purchase direct, or you can purchase this bag, this little badge, and this. You purchase the little badge, and we'll give you a Happy and Glorious free. But Mary will be getting this winging away to her tomorrow free, along with a free copy of this. Look forward to sending that to you, Mary, and thank you, and thank everybody who entered the competition. Now, we've got our event coming up on Saturday, this Saturday, 3 days from now. We're going to be in the centre of Stirling with our Bruce to Elizabeth, our Great British Monarchy celebration rally. If you'd like to join us, please send us an email or send us a Facebook message or contact us in whatever way you want to contact us. Goodness knows it's easy enough to contact us. And we'll tell you all about it, and we'll hope to see you there. It's going to be an absolutely excellent day of activism with some amazing visuals which we have got for you. Wait till you see our banner designed by our great banner designer. It's knocking it out the park. It really deserves to be on the front page of every newspaper in not just Britain but the world. And that's high praise for something which is absolutely amazing. So there's that. And I'll be giving a speech on the PA system, and we've got flags like that to celebrate the reconciliation and healing which is found today through the Union and through the royal family. And we'll also be counting the Scottish nationalists as they slouch by shamefacedly off to their divisive rally, which is 4 miles away, by the way. Okay, so fair play to any Scottish nationalists that manage to struggle onto Bannockburn Field from their marching point when they begin. Fair play to them. They've almost marched as far as Edward's army marched when he marched from Berwick to Bannockburn Field. It's almost that kind of distance they'll be marching. For what? For what? For a cause that I'm afraid has got less support every day. Anyway, we're going to be just like ripping them a bit like that, you know, on the day as well. Because how could you not? How could you not? And of course, also our crowdfunder. This time next week will be the end of it. We're trying to raise 2,500, and last time I looked we were at 1,285, 51%. So let's try to get that up a bit, because that's got to take us through until December, when we have our Yule Britannia Christmas crowdfunder, folks. Thank you to everybody who has commented tonight. Lots of great comments. We couldn't read them all out. Let's put that crowdfunder banner back up there just to remember folks about it all. And thank you to everybody who has commented. Couldn't read out everything that was there because we had so many comments coming in tonight, and we had a good number of folk watching as well. So we'll see you, hopefully we'll see you on Saturday. We'll be broadcasting live as well, so you'll be able to catch us on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok, on YouTube, and we'll be broadcasting several times as well throughout the day, so please do keep checking in on our page to see that, sharing alike. Folks, it just remains for me to say, as always, God bless the United Kingdom and God save the Queen. See you next week.